This conference will now be recorded.
Hi there, and welcome to Behind the Mask of a Hospitality Leader. Really enjoyed chatting to Paul Pavley last week, and delighted to have Steve Alton, CEO of the BII, with me here today. So, Steve, how you doing?
Yeah, very good, Nick. Thank you. Thanks for the time.
You're very welcome. You're very, very welcome. Okay, so I think probably it's fair to say you've been busy and interesting times. I think it's probably fair to say that. I was interested to see the One Voice, the collaboration that you guys have put together. How did it come about, Steve, and what's going on with the activity and planning at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. As you said, interesting times. I kind of formally started as chief exec not that long before the pandemic struck, and we were originally locked down. So yeah, it's been an interesting start to my time here at the BII. But part of that has been the One Voice group. So it was formed with a real clear focus on making sure there was one single aligned voice into government. You know, one of the real dangers is that you confuse government ministers, MPs, and departments with varying requests for support. So it was a way of ensuring that we've got an absolute clarity on priorities and what we're asking for as literally a one voice, because all of the different groups and just again to reflect, we're made up of CAMERA, SEBA for the small brewers, Pub is the Hub, doing obviously fantastic community hubs as part of the pub network. You've got obviously ourselves as a individual membership organisation, over 9,000 members, predominantly running single pubs, obviously across the nation as well, BBPA and UK hospitality. So you've got a real breadth there from consumer through breweries and into pubs, so the pub sector as a whole. So we've been meeting incredibly frequently, most weeks, twice a week, with obviously the pace of change that's been coming through, really to review where we are at that point in time and ensure again our engagement with government is incredibly joined up and clear. And I think you've seen that come through. The references that hospitality has had explicitly within government support, government announcements, be it from the Chancellor or be it from the Prime Minister himself. I think there's no doubt of the importance of hospitality to the UK economy. Probably more importantly, in a sense, though, is how many jobs we support in the sector. Over 900,000 in the pub sector from pubs and breweries. If you broaden it to hospitality, 3.3 million. We're an incredible source of employment and exciting roles, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And then the third element that we've been really, really keen to make sure lands is about the community and social value that pubs, absolutely generate. Yep. We've seen that in huge amounts across the pandemic in terms of the initial lockdown, in between times, and obviously we now, unfortunately, in England, we're shut down yet again. We ourselves, the BII, are running our Heart of the Community Awards, and we've awarded already, because this isn't it's the best of the best. It's all those pubs that deserve to be recognised for what they do, above and beyond to connect to others. And fabulous stories, everything from, again, looking after vulnerable people, some of the big activities, using their kitchens in lockdown to make meals and take those out to the most vulnerable, through to we had one of our licensees ordained as a vicar so she could conduct wedding ceremonies, recognising there's real challenges on people getting married during lockdown. So incredible stories, and just underpin why pubs are so special.
Oh, amazing. And firstly, thank you to you and all involved. I think it's great. I mean, hospitality is often described as the heart of the community, but I think it's really showing that that it is a community, and some great behaviours. That said, Steve, what makes you angry at the moment in terms of how hard it is for the industry?
I think what is deeply frustrating is the efforts that our members and the pubs particularly have gone to in implementing incredibly complex guidelines. We were involved with writing those initial guidelines. Everybody's absolutely stood up to want to operate professionally and safely and give confidence to their staff and customers that they're doing everything possible. And they've just done such an absolutely fantastic job since reopening. And you can see in the data, and that's the frustrating thing, that what makes me angry is the data does not support that hospitality is a main contributor, unfortunately, to this devastating virus and the pandemic. We opened, and even with those restrictions, and you've got reduced capacity, you've got additional operating costs, but despite all of those things, it was done incredibly well, and there was no discernible impact to infections. In fact, we've seen that in the continuation of data, particularly the Public Health England, where less than, well, I think currently less than 2% of cases are identified coming from the hospitality sector. So it's just deeply frustrating that they've done such a good job, and then we've had a sequence of additional controls. So curfew, has caused huge issues, and loss of trade, in between 30 and 40% loss in trade overnight. Not a nice smooth line, literally a cliff edge. And we've seen obviously the unintended consequences yet again of everybody being dispersed onto the street at the same time. Absolutely working against the health priorities that we're trying to safeguard. So curfew, deeply frustrating. The tier system itself, again, very frustrating for those that were starting to move into the higher tiers, particularly with no mixed households. Yet again, a vast majority of our pubs and members, people come together as work colleagues, as friends, and suddenly the inability to do that saw another comparable drop with curfew, so another 30% off. And bear in mind, the start point here was they were already trading at best break even, so they're straight into trading at a loss. And then a further lockdown, in England, and obviously we've had the fire break in Wales, and we've also had obviously some more extreme measures in terms of serving alcohol in Scotland as well for our members there. So all those things deeply, deeply frustrating, and they've done so well, and the evidence base isn't there. So there is a feeling in our members that they've been scapegoated, and they've been unfairly been made to be seen as part of the problem. And I think where we need to start to relook at this is we are very much the solution. We're heading towards Christmas. So I'll get back to the priorities of One Voice. We've got two key things that we're pushing. We've already written and engaged with the Chancellor on a package of support, because we have to safeguard these pubs. We've got to get through to spring on the basis that then restrictions should start to be lifted. And then when these guys want to trade, they just want to trade freely and do what they do so well. So we put that package of support in. Furlough and the extension of that through to March was incredibly positive, but the grants right now don't meet the costs of these businesses that are so severely impacted, and they need the surety that business rates and VAT, which both will come back into play obviously early into next year, need to be postponed for another year, so they can plan their recovery and not be hit with a huge swathe of costs just when they're starting to build some early momentum again. So the priority is very much about December now, and it's about reopening, and it's reopening in the most free way we can through the tiers. We've already got all of the guidance that we're following, so all of the extra hygiene, the distancing, the table service, the masks, they undoubtedly will continue as a dynamic, and I think in the main our members are very happy that that they continue to support that, because it's important. They're responsible operators, but we need to look at other elements of control. So curfew needs looking at, it needs adapting. It isn't a sensible intervention. As you saw, the comment from Sage that was actually referenced didn't say actually there was any discernible impact from it. It was marginal at best. So that needs to be reviewed. Equally, the rule of 6 only really works if it's mixed households, because that's how we come together. In pubs, to come together with friends and different family groups. So there's some things that we are pushing at, but equally, we're heading towards Christmas. Everybody has got such a pent up need and desire to reconnect with friends and family, and we can provide a fabulous, safe, controlled, managed, professional environment for that to happen. And my fear is, if that isn't recognised very quickly, people will do that themselves. People will not adhere to the rules. They'll do it in household settings. They'll have the parties, they'll have the gatherings, and suddenly we'll be back to square one. Whereas actually, by engaging positively with the hospitality sector, we can provide that place. We know we're not going to have those huge gatherings, those big parties that we've had in previous years, but we can provide a place to still celebrate in a sensible, controlled manner. And the worst thing that can happen now is that we continue to be locked down and controlled to the extent that we are now. So we're pushing really hard, Nick, at the moment on working with government to adapt those controls sensibly, so we can get as many of our pubs as open as possible, and allow very simply to get in there with your friends and your family and reconnect.
There's a lot of nonsensical ability. I'm going to make a word up there, Steve. Businesses have shut. and open successfully, there's a huge demand from customers. And one of the things that Paul brought up last week, which I agree with, is it's that December drive and January, and fingers crossed on that front. So hospitality as a brand in the UK has been in the spotlight. That's for sure. What are your views, Steve, on whether being in the spotlight is a good or a bad thing?
I think in the main, absolutely, it's positive. If you look at from a government perspective, initially there's now a dedicated pubs and restaurants team at the heart of the business ministry, which is absolutely fantastic. So we've got that voice and that connection point now that we've never had. We've just been another sector previously. So that recognition, I think, is really important. And I think there is no doubt in the general public, we all love pubs. We're a nation of pub lovers. And I think we've been able to connect to that people are missing that pub, missing that contact, that social interaction. So I think that's all positive. It's been really frustrating that the press has got hold of some incredibly isolated incidents and shared, if it's rule breaking and all the things that inevitably in any society there's always going to be a very small percentage of people that break the rules. But that's not representative of what we're about. If you go to our members' pubs, it's fabulous. Despite you are absolutely, you're connecting to the app on the way in for the NHS track and trace. You're taking to your table, the hygiene measures there, that they're masked, they come to you. Do you know what? Even through the mask, you can see there's a smile and there's a welcome, and they're pleased to see you, which is absolutely testament to these guys. So I think it's positive. I think there's no doubt about our economic value now. If there was ever before, in terms of 3.3 million jobs, the taxation, 40 billion a year we contribute to the treasury as hospitality. That's huge. That's the reason to invest in our sector, because our sector is viable. It's viable and growing prior to lockdown. There's certain sectors that through this will have changed our habits as consumers, right? So high street, we know, has probably had what was evolution accelerate into a short few months now in terms of our behaviours around online buying and all those things. You can't replicate what pubs do online. You just can't. The atmosphere, the way you can connect, the fabulous local products, local beers, the locally sourced beef from the farm down the road, all those kind of things. People want to do it. You saw that with the Eat Out. They came out in droves. It was very difficult to get tables or get into some of these venues that could take advantage of it, who had food as part of their offer. And we want to reconnect, and pubs are so important. So overall, look, incredibly positive that we're in the spotlight. The economics are understood, the employment's understood, but as importantly, once the shackles are off and we can trade freely, there's demand for what we do. We can support those jobs, and where other sectors have had to lay off, desperately for individuals, they've lost jobs on a permanent basis. We can grow, we could provide that employment, and importantly, these are not just about pulling a pint. These are skilled jobs. We've got some of the most incredible individuals who balance really complex demands. Delivering fabulous drinks, fabulous food, running complex businesses. With lots of suppliers. You've got to do your forecasting. You've got to you've got to run it as a business. You've got to run it through teams. These guys now increasingly are opening from crack of dawn with breakfast when they can open and trade freely, all the way through to late night, and they have shifts of people they've got to manage through as well. So this is an exciting place to work. It's dynamic, and at the heart of all that is hospitality. Yes, they're businesses, but they lead with a smile. They lead with the customer experience. And we all know, Nick, and we could spend hours on this call talking about the places we love to go to. And there's something special about it. And in the main, it's not usually the product you reference when you write that great review. It's the service. It's how they make you feel. It's the attention to detail. And that's what we do incredibly well. So, that's opportunity. We've got to use the, as you say, the profile of hospitality now to really signal to those out there that have been unfortunate to lose their jobs, who are talented, intelligent people, to really come and build their career. And we've got so many examples where people join us at entry level, be it front of house or back of house, and can accelerate and running their own pub, running their own set of pubs, multiple operation restaurants, And we need to shout more about that. And I think sometimes we do very well internally talking to ourselves, but we've got to get out there to the general public and make this why wouldn't you want to come to such a vibrant place to build your career?
Yeah, Steve, I love your passion, and I get it. I get it. The unskilled industry, but I think that it is great because we have been talking so much internally about what a great industry and a great career, and there are so many case studies. But now we're in the spotlight a little bit. It's just fingers crossed. For so many that the hospitality being a career of choice, and the opportunities there are also kind of driven through as part of the messaging to change the public perception, because we know the demand is there. So it's tough, but I think in the long run there are positives.
I think building on that, there's two things as well for next year. We've got some genuine impact from the change with the EU. The immigration controls, as you know very well, do preclude us now actually getting a number of core roles from the EU, because they're not perceived, and this is the frustration, as being highly skilled jobs. So we're going to have to source from homegrown talent, I think, more fully. But there lies the opportunity. We've got some great developments. I mean, the BII itself, obviously with the BII, the awarding body that sits within our structure, obviously, again, we award apprenticeships and short courses and qualifications. And there's some fabulous career paths with specialisms in there. If you want to start as on a chef pathway, or front of house and specialize in cocktails or barista coffee, or we've got the toolkit. It's absolutely, you can come in and depending what likes your passion, you can follow that pathway and be supported through that as well. And again, we've got some great examples. We're not starting from scratch. A lot of people we know very well have got some fabulous stories where they weren't sure where they wanted to go in hospitality. They came in and there's just something special that kept them, and then they went down their path and now are running incredibly successful businesses, only interrupted, and let's see it as an interruption, by the controls that the government's chose to implement right now. As I said, as soon as those shackles are off, these guys will trade again and do what they do so well, and we'll be queuing up to get back in there again, because it's the part of our national psyche and heritage, and that's why, again, we've got to protect it. So I think it's an exciting place to be. Right now, it won't feel like it's a lot of our operators. It's desperate. That there's no money in the bank, that they've built up debts. What they need now is surety. They need to know how we're going to get out of this, how we're going to exit this, and that they can dig in and get through it, and then they can be supported in recovering their businesses. So yes, I'm passionate about the opportunity, but I'm absolutely no doubt it's going to be a tough road ahead, and we've got a lot of work to do, both as the BII directly to the government, but also as part of the trade bodies, to make sure the support's there, because they deserve that support. This is a great industry, it's viable, and quite frankly, without it, the Chancellor won't get the impact of the economic recovery that he needs. So he needs us there.
Yeah, I mean, hats off too. I completely agree. The hats off to the operators, really. And I think going through that journey from a customer perspective, seeing the first opening and staff being lost, and with a very different service style, to suddenly you can feel a smile, even though it's only with the eyes, and that warmth and hospitality. So I think an incredible learning curve, and to say what you said, I think it's difficult to see that when there's so much pressure and so much almost despair, but there is definitely hope. And I think the news that's happened this week, I won't sort of comment on it too much because we could go on for ages, there's definitely hope out there, and I think people have hung in really well, incredibly well actually, and the industry, and hats off to all involved. So I know you're a busy man, Steve. Thank you so much for your time. It's been really good chatting and really insightful as well. So we'll catch up soon.
My pleasure. Thank you, Nick.
Thanks again. Bye for now.